Hello and welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Carrie Hazley, Chief of the Emergency Services and Multimedia Branch, here with the beginning of the weather show. Later in the show, I'll be joined by meteorologist Amanda Bowen. She'll be bringing you aviation weather and marine weather later on. If you want to reach us, we have multiple ways for you to do that. The first is going to be the Alaska Weather Information Line. That's a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-472-0391. You can call that number anytime. It'll give you a menu system. You can click through the menu system to select the area for which you want the weather forecast. You can always reach us on the web, weather.gov/Alaska. And if you were to remove the word Alaska there, you can replace it with Anchorage, with Juneau, or with Fairbanks. All of those sites will take you to a map where you can click the area for which you want a weather forecast. You can zoom the map in, zoom the map out, and it'll also take you straight to a very detailed forecast for your area of concern. Lastly, you can email me. My name is Carrie Hazley. My email address there on the screen is carrie.hazley@noaa.gov. So let's start by taking a look at the advisories and also some watches that are out across the state. If we start up in the northern part of the state first, we actually have a winter weather advisory out right now for snow, blowing snow and some gusty winds along parts of the Brooks Range, stretching up into the far reaches of the Arctic coast there. That'll expire tonight at 10 p.m. and then we'll look for some of the winter weather to taper off as we go through the morning hours tomorrow, but still some scattered snow showers lingering even after that advisory expires. Coming further south, Kodiak Island, we should see an area of low pressure move into that area tomorrow, and so for now they're under a winter storm watch. We're looking at the possibility for some blizzard conditions to develop in that particular area, but at least with the watch we're certainly looking for the potential for accumulating snow, very gusty winds, and also blowing snow developing in Kodiak by Tuesday morning and continuing into Wednesday. Moving further east, we have winter weather watch out over the Yakutat area there. That one should expire as we get into tomorrow morning, but we will look for the weather there to continue. We could see that be transitioned into an advisory come the morning hours. Again, snow, accumulating snow and gusty winds. And then lastly, further east, we also have a winter storm watch out for the area around Skagway and the area around Haines. We're primarily looking for the significant winter weather there to be on the highways once you get up into the mountains, the White and Chilkoot Pass areas. And there around Skagway, most of the significant snow is going to be up above about 8,000 feet. But again, continuous flow from west to east of a significant winter weather continuing to impact our area despite it being April. So let's take a look at our satellite picture for the day today so far. We've seen widespread cloud cover working its way from west to east across much of mainland Alaska today, spreading with it quite a bit in the way of scattered snow showers over parts of the interior and also out on the west coast, while we started the day with some winter weather advisories. Those have all been canceled, but we are still seeing some scattered snow showers out along the west coast. We're also seeing some cloud cover pushing its way down into the panhandle today, spreading some scattered showers in that particular area. And then just some scattered clouds out over the Bering Sea. As far as the weather today goes, again, we've had widespread scattered snow shower activity across mainland Alaska, and we continue to see some of that as we see a couple of troughs of low pressure associated with a low pressure system up over the Arctic coast continue to work its way across the Arctic from west to east. And then as we go on through the day today, we should see some of these snow showers taper off over a lot of mainland. There's also an area of low pressure. This is really the next weather maker that's just offshore from southwest Alaska, and a frontal boundary associated with that stretching from Bethel down through the Dillingham area and then wrapping around towards Sand Point. With that particular system, we will see the front taper off and start to dissipate later on today, and then some of the shower activity with that will also begin to dissipate. Down over the Panhandle, we see a mix of all precip types. Right along the coast, we're seeing primarily rain, and then elsewhere over the Panhandle, it's a mix of rain and snow, with just snow dominating the weather from essentially Juneau northward and impacting places like Skagway and Haines today. Going into the overnight hours, a lot of the snow should start to dissipate, particularly over most of mainland Alaska. We will see some snow showers linger in the Fairbanks area up towards Bettles and then stretching on up along the Arctic coast from Wainwright over to AKwx and then on to places like Kaktovik as you get further to the east. That again associated with another trough, the low pressure system that's associated with up over the Arctic quite a bit. There's an area of low pressure there over the Bristol Bay area. That one will continue to persist at least through through part of the overnight hours, but the front will continue to weaken and associated shower activity will continue to taper off. And then over the Panhandle, most of the shower activity there should taper off just to some isolated snow showers. So as we go into our day on Tuesday, we see a new system pushing its way into the far western part of our area of responsibility. That area of low pressure should have a frontal boundary that reaches Shemya by Tuesday afternoon, spreading with it some gusty winds and a mix of rain and snow out there. A few scattered snow showers over the Bering, but the real weather maker really becomes this area of low pressure that'll be just to the east of Kodiak Island by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon. This is the system that's triggering some of those watches that we saw earlier in the segment there, where we could see some blizzard conditions in places like Kodiak with, again, very significant accumulating snow and gusty winds and blowing snow. We're also going to look as we get into the day tomorrow for winds to pick up through Thompson Pass, where we could see very low visibilities and also blowing snow there. A few scattered showers lingering for parts of the interior in places like McGrath and then stretching around the Alaska range. Also some scattered showers up over the Arctic. Winter weather also persists in the Panhandle, where we've got those watches out for the Yakutat area and then Haines and Skagway, where we will see snow or a mix of rain and snow as you get closer to the coast. Really just the southern part of the Panhandle at this point looks like they're going to be the area that escapes precipitation. Everything further north should at least see some form of winter weather on Tuesday. Finally, into Wednesday, high pressure starts to move in and dominate the western part of the state. There could be a few lingering snow showers over parts of the interior on Wednesday, but really better weather as we get into this time period here for much of the state. Some scattered showers up over the northwestern part of the state, including places like Kotzebue and stretching around towards Point Lay and Wainwright. That area of low pressure, though, that makes all the weather in the Kodiak area on Tuesday will move closer to the Panhandle by Wednesday. Scattered snow showers around Yakutat, and again, a mix of rain and snow. Just can't get enough winter weather down over the Panhandle. That will persist on Wednesday as well. So let's take a look at temperatures now. Low temperatures tomorrow morning as we start our day. Some very cool temperatures for an April day up along the Arctic coast. We see temperatures primarily in the negative single digits. Utqiagvik will bottom out tomorrow morning at -6 degrees over towards Dead Horse. We'll look for them to start out their day tomorrow at -3 degrees. Coming further inland, Bettles -2, Fort Yukon 6 degrees to kick off your day. And then out on the west coast, as we see some of the clouds start to clear, by Tuesday morning, you will start your day at -2, 9 at Bethel. Here in the south central area, we'll look to see temperatures down in the teens. This is pretty cool for an April day. Anchorage, you'll start your day at around 18 tomorrow morning, 28 down in Kodiak. And then as we move around over towards the Panhandle, we'll start the day in the upper 20s to low 30s. As far as recovering as we go into Tuesday afternoon, Fort Yukon 25 degrees for a high, Fairbanks just 21. Up on the Arctic coast, temperatures primarily in the teens, stretching over towards 20 as you get towards Barter Island. When we look over on the west coast, Nome, you're going to top out at 11 tomorrow. Down in Bethel, 21. As we get down around the Aleutian chain, we see temperatures just breaking freezing, primarily in the 30s. Over towards Kodiak, when we have that significant winter weather moving through, you'll warm up to just above freezing into the low 30s. Temperatures over the Panhandle also warming up into the low to mid 30s for part of the day, and then some temperatures in the 40s in the southern part of the Panhandle. Going into Wednesday, temperatures drop right back down. We actually see some -teens by Wednesday morning up along the Arctic coast, -11 in Dead Horse and -6 in Utqiagvik. Around the coast a little bit, we see -3 to start off Wednesday morning in Kotzebue, 2 in Nome, 1 degree to start off Wednesday morning in April there at Bethel. And then as we get further down towards the Aleutians, temperatures Wednesday morning in the 20s. South central Alaska, we'll again see temperatures in the teens in Wednesday morning, 27 over in Yakutat. And then as we get over into the Panhandle, temperatures in the 30s. By Wednesday, we will see some recovery. We'll look for a high of 22 at Fort Yukon, 23 in Fairbanks, and then 30s in the southern part of the state.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen with your look at aviation weather. Starting with flying weather on Tuesday morning, we'll see some IFR conditions stretching from the North Slope down into the Central Brooks Range, as well as IFR conditions over the Kuskokwim Delta. Also, a little bit of IFR over the higher terrain of the Southern Panhandle, with marginal conditions for much of the rest of the Panhandle, as well as much of the Aleutians up into the Alaska Peninsula and over a large portion of the interior mainland. For Tuesday afternoon, we'll see quite a lot of improvement. Less MVFR over the mainland, mostly from the Brooks Range south to about the Alaska Range. And then we'll see marginal conditions over much of the Aleutians still, some marginal conditions over the higher terrain of the Panhandle, but in general, VFR for much of the Panhandle. A little bit of IFR stretching from eastern Kodiak Island into the northern Gulf for Tuesday afternoon. For Wednesday morning, we'll see conditions deteriorate again with IFR conditions over the North Gulf coast stretching from the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula all the way to much of the Panhandle. Also IFR conditions for the western Brooks Range and parts of the western Aleutians on Wednesday morning. Improvement again on Wednesday afternoon though, so we'll still see some IFR conditions for the western Aleutians and some IFR for the higher terrain of the Panhandle stretching all the way to around the Cordova area, but mostly VFR for the mainland down into the Alaska Peninsula. Marginal conditions for the southern Panhandle as well as some areas of the interior, particularly along the north side of the Alaska Range. Looking at pass conditions, Anaktuvuk Pass IFR improving to MVFR Tuesday afternoon. Adigan Pass also IFR improving to MVFR. Lake Clark MVFR improving to VFR on Tuesday afternoon. Merrill MVFR all day though. Rainy Pass MVFR, Windy Pass MVFR, as well as Isabel Pass MVFR on Tuesday. Mentasta Pass MVFR improving to VFR Tuesday afternoon. Tanita Pass MVFR all day on Tuesday. Portage Pass VFR actually deteriorating to marginal conditions Tuesday afternoon. And Chilcoot and White Passes both MVFR all day on Tuesday. Taking a look at freezing levels, that surface freezing level is stretching all the way from the southern Alaska Peninsula up into the northern Gulf Coast area and through the Panhandle. We've got our warmer air coming up into the Gulf, but not quite reaching any of the Alaska land areas yet Tuesday morning. For icing, we've got a few areas for Tuesday, below 10,000 feet for the western Aleutians and much of the Bering Sea, below 8,000 feet for the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and below 11,000 feet stretching from the eastern Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island all the way across the northern Gulf to the entirety of the Alaska Panhandle. Looking at the jet stream, we've got a bit of a streak stretching from east of Russia into the southern Alaska Peninsula. So that's going to be bringing about 120 miles per hour out of the west and northwest into the southern Alaska Peninsula. And then our main jet stream is going to be about 150 to 160 miles per hour through the northern Gulf, so east of Kodiak Island and coming into the northern Panhandle and far southeastern interior, with about 140 to 150 miles per hour out of the west coming into the northern Panhandle. At 9,000 feet, we see sort of the same pattern with about 40 miles per hour out of the northwest coming into the eastern Aleutians, with our strongest winds 50 to 65 miles per hour on the south side of a low pressure system. Those are going to be in the northern Gulf area. A little bit of a secondary streak between about Bethel and Fairbanks out of the southwest and west, 30 to 40 miles per hour there. For 3,000 foot winds, much the same pattern, about 30 miles per hour out of the northwest for the eastern Aleutians, about 50 miles per hour out of the south for the western Aleutians, and about 50 to 65 miles per hour with those strongest winds in the northern Gulf out of the south. Taking a look at turbulence, we have a few areas of turbulence for Tuesday, below 4,000 feet just on the north side of much of the Alaska Range, also below about 4,000 feet for a portion of the Kuskokwim Delta on Tuesday, and finally about below 4,000 feet for much of Kodiak Island with some considerable moderate.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists used this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the sea ice edge in Cook Inlet, we're actually seeing quite a lot of melting due to the high sun angle or increasing sun angle for springtime and the above freezing temperatures that we've been having during the day. Expect that to continue through this week. The ice edge out in the Bering has been shifting a little bit to the northeast due to the winds. There's also been a little bit of ice growth along the immediate edge, but we'll see a return of south to southwesterly winds later this week, particularly in the Bristol Bay area, where we expect the ice edge to retract a little bit more, maybe 20 to 40 nautical miles more later this week with those southerly winds. For southeast Marines, on Tuesday, expect fairly light winds, 15 to 20 knots for the Gulf and 10 to 15 knots over the inside waterways. Seas over the Gulf 8 to 12 feet and around 3 feet for the inside waterways. Everything's going to be trending a little bit higher on Wednesday for southeast. We'll see some gales over the Gulf waters, 30 to 40 knots out of the south and southwest generally, and over the inside waterways, 20 to 25 knot winds out of the southeast. Seas increasing over the Gulf to around 15 to 17 feet and to about 4 to 7 feet for the inside waterways on Wednesday. For south central, again, pretty light winds for Tuesday out of the north and northeast generally, 10 to 15 knots, 20 knots down near the north side of Kodiak Island. And seas also fairly low for this time of year, 5 to 8 feet in the Gulf, around 2 to 4 feet for Cook Inlet, and just 2 feet in Prince William Sound. Looking into Wednesday, that same trend will be seen as we saw with southeast, increasing winds and increasing seas. Seas increasing to 13 to 15 feet over the Gulf, and winds to 30 to 35 knots generally out of the northwest. For the Alaska Peninsula on Tuesday, expect winds 15 to around 30 knots with those strongest winds along the south end of the peninsula. Seas 6 to 8 feet on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and 10 to around 13 feet on the north side, with pretty small seas right near the ice edge in Bristol Bay, around 2 feet. Looking ahead into Wednesday, winds coming down a little bit, 15 to 20 knots, highest 30 knots out of the northwest, just on the east side of Kodiak Island. Sea's going to be coming up there a bit as well to about 14 feet. Otherwise, seas coming down are staying pretty steady, 6 to 8 feet on the south side of the peninsula and 3 to 5 feet on the north side of the peninsula on Wednesday. For the Aleutian chain, the strongest winds we'll see are going to be furthest east on Tuesday out of the northwest at about 30 knots, around 15 knots for the central Aleutians, and 20 to 25 knots out of the south and southeast for the western Aleutians. Seas ranging from about 5 to 8 feet on the south side to 5 to 11 feet on the north side, and around 6 to 9 feet for the western Aleutians. For Wednesday, we'll see those winds come up generally just a little bit, a little more consistency across the Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots across the board. Out of the south and southeast, a little bit of southwest if you get far enough east in the Aleutians. Seas 5 to 10 feet on the south side, 7 to 8 feet on the north side, and around 9 to 10 feet for the western Aleutians on Wednesday. For Tuesday on the west coast, not much wind as we look north, around 5 knots in Norton Sound, increasing to 10 to 20 knots out in the Barium between St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island, 15 knots out of the southwest near the Pribilovs. Seas 3 to 6 feet near the ice edge. Looking to Wednesday, winds increase a little bit out of the south and southwest, 10 to 15 knots, 20 knots just south of St. Matthew Island out of the east. Seas increasing just a little bit as well, anywhere from 2 to 4 feet right along the ice edge to around 8 feet near the Pribilovs. For the Arctic coast for Tuesday, a little bit gusty along the north slope, 20 to 30 knots of wind out of the west. Along the northwest coast, 15 to 20 knots out of the south and southwest. And then if we look ahead into Wednesday, 10 to 15 knots for the north slope and 15 to 20 knots for the northwest coast. Not much going on tonight in the weather, so we will talk to you again here tomorrow. Thanks for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.